morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another Wednesday morning and welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Beef Productions. I'm working on typing in a passcode here that doesn't seem to be working. And it is a another fine Wednesday morning. We have a great show for you today. Focus on execution, follow through on commitment. That is a quote from a from that is a retelling of a quote from Kenneth Chenault. Many people don't focus enough on execution. If you make a commitment to get something done, you need to follow through on that commitment. Kenneth Chenault is relatively famously the third African American CEO of a Fortune 500 company to ever be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And it is Black Business Month, as well as all the other things that are recognized as national celebrations here in the month of August. Welcome to Black Business Month, and hopefully you're supporting your local Black businesses. I just shared out something the other day on Facebook, on a Facebook post. Somebody was looking for a Black-owned business that does, tile work, and there's lots of folks that have Black-owned businesses and do things like tile work or do literally anything, and they are all listed on the city's office of what is that? Sorry, I was about to say Office of Property Management. Um, uh, Let me pull it up right now. They're listed on the city's Office of Economic Opportunity website, and that's if the business registers as a Black-owned or minority-owned business. It includes folks from the Black Chamber of African American Chamber of Commerce, the LGBTQ plus Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and every other, the Asian Chamber of Commerce, every other identity, women-owned businesses, every other minority identity is represented on that list. And it's a list that is vetted. So you to get on that list of the Office of Economic Opportunity as a business, you have to register your business with a national minority council. And there's several national companies that register businesses as minority owned. And then you can be added to the list of the city's businesses that are minority owned. It's just interesting, that folks don't know that that exists, and so I figured I'd bring it up. You can do with the information as you will, but just know that out there exists an actual list that's vetted of minority-owned businesses. And so if you're looking to do business with a minority-owned business, it's easy enough to have that by just looking up what businesses are in your city and registered as minority businesses. At any rate, we've got a good show for you today. UC Townhomes, we're going to talk Christo-fascist pushback, illegal investigations, and the right to privacy. Those two are pretty linked. And with me this morning, I'm going to bring them on screen right now. We have Rick and we have Kelly. And I'm going to get you guys to say hello. We'll start with Kelly. Kelly, please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Hi, I am Kelly McCaughan. I use she and they pronouns. I am a writer, actor, and comedian, primarily based in Philadelphia, but I moved up to New York as well.
Awesome. And Rick, if you would please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and what it is you do.
I'm Rick Lewis. Pronouns are I am, he, him. I am a theater professional. I do a bunch of different things in theater. I'm a local politician, so I'm an artist activist.
Awesome. And just for sake of, we usually promote something that our guest artists are doing. And I know I've recently had you on, Kelly, and I've also recently had Rick on. But if you would just refresh the audience what it is you guys are working on, and we'll go from there. Kelly, what are you working on right now? You're just saying you're exhausted because you're in rehearsals.
Yeah, so I am currently in rehearsals for the world premiere of a new play called Hannah and the Healing Stone. And it's being produced by Terra Nova Collective, which was in New York City, and now they're kind of being produced in Philadelphia, I guess at this point. Things kind of got shifted, I think, during quarantine, but yeah, they're a really amazing, cool company, and a lot of the people I'm working with are brand new to Philadelphia, so it's a great way to see new talent and meet new people that you might not have met before. Everyone's been really, really great. And the show, I would say, is Tim Burton meets Alice in Wonderland. So yeah, anything. Okay, so Big Fish, the movie, meets Alice in Wonderland meets Twin Peaks. It's very trippy, very weird, very funny, and you should come see it.
Awesome. Rick, what are you working on right now?
Uh, Three things I want to mention. I'm directing for First Person Arts Sex Files, which is a cabaret on sexual empowerment, which is going to be at Underground Arts
Ooh.
September 20th during the Fringe. I'm working on Ma'afa project in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania with the Touchstone Theater Company, which is a multimedia collaborative piece about the Middle Passage. And as a politician, I'm working on creating a blue wave for November, because as we saw in Kansas City, when people come out, or Kansas, I'm sorry, when people come out and vote for things that matter, sensibility rules out over Christo-fascism, which we'll touch on later. So those are the three things I'm working on.
I'm going to promote real quick that I am also the board president of the PDC, the Philadelphia Dramatist Center, and we have a couple of things coming up. This weekend, actually, we have the Bake Off, which is a regular thing that the PDC does. A bunch of ingredients are thrown at a bunch of writers. They have 48 hours to write a 10-page script. And then that script is performed on Sunday, the 14th. So if you're an audience member and you like seeing experimental work and people under pressure performing really well, come out on Sunday and check it out. You can check out the PDC's events at philadrama.org. You can also check our social media. The Facebook page is the most active. That's facebook.com/philadrama. And we'll also have a fringe event in September. The weekends of the 23rd and 30th of September. But that has yet to be determined exactly what it is. Because producing stuff right now is hard. We're gonna do one of my famous, really poorly decided segues because I didn't pre-plan it. But producing stuff right now is really hard, I think. You guys can feel free to agree or disagree with me, but I find with all the Christo-fascist pushback on the comeuppance that is happening right now due to the actually illegal things that the previous administration did, um, and the attempted coup on the country. I find it really hard to concentrate on, like making stuff that makes people feel good or enjoy themselves. Um, I don't know. I like when I watch the news and or read comments on Facebook or read what's going on, you know, uh, like there are again literally people calling for a civil war and talking about deploying weapons against their fellow citizens because they just don't agree that that those fellow citizens are actually alive human beings, I guess, is what it comes down to. Um, I like, and and the thing that gets me about this is they do it out in the open because they can't conceive of a world in which this is wrong. Like that calling for the death of like other people, calling for the subjugation of women in public is like wrong. Like I'm confused.
Okay, so when in American history has white male Protestant supremacy not been the norm? Realistically. So it's been about 30 years that there's actually sort of been a cultural shift where, even where white people even are starting to say that xenophobia, homophobia, misogyny, racism aren't okay. For most of our history, that's been the default. And so, like, I when I look at kind of what's going on, and if you get a chance to check it out, there's an OAN, One American News Network documentary on January 6th, which is really interesting because it's from the standpoint of the rioters and the people that were involved in what's happening and how they can't understand that the legal system is treating them this way and holding them without charging them and not letting them talk to their lawyer and all of the things that have been happening to other groups for centuries, literally. And they can't grasp. Kevin McCarthy today was on the news talking about the raid at Mar-a-Lago, and he said, we now see that the American justice system is not equal. And I laughed because
we've been saying that.
Right. So I believe that American Christo-fascism, or as I call it, WIMPs, white male Protestant supremacy, is on its dying bed, but it's not going to die quietly. And the death throes are what we're seeing, and the convulsions. And I think it's going to get a little worse before it gets better.
I mean, but I mean, not to, I mean, because that's the hope. I mean, that's the hope. That's my hope. I think that's everybody's hope that's alive right now is that this is actually the dying throes. But we've been saying that same thing since the 50s. You know,
Right. Well, and like I said, it's really only been about, because like if you look back, like if you look at, churches being blown up and people getting away with it, or if you look at some of the old pictures from the 30s where there's a town square and there's a guy hanging from a tree and there's 150 people kind of standing around eating popcorn. Like when you look at what used to be the default, what people used to kind of get away with, you look at kind of what's happening now, and it's easy to look at it and go, how can people do this? And how can a civilized society have this kind of chaos? And the reality is that that kind of chaos, you know, from Native American genocide through slavery, through internment, like that kind of chaos is us. That is our country. And so I think that there's a disconnect with the historical thread that leads a lot of people to panic now because they don't realize that this has kind of been what we're doing all along.
I wouldn't say I'm panicking. I wouldn't say a lot of other people are panicking per se. I just what I what
A
I
lot of white liberals are.
well, sure, a lot of white liberals are because a lot of white liberals are like, this has never happened before, and we're all like,
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
but yeah, um, I don't know, uh, and not to speak for you since you're on screen, Kelly, but you are a white liberal, and so
I
I'm
thought about that when I said it. I was like,
No.
I mean, from your perspective, from a white liberal perspective, what is going on right now? Like, what have you seen? Like, what have you seen amongst the folks that you talk to regularly, and like what's going on in the world of, like artistic white women, I guess, is what you're representing right at the moment.
Well,
I mean, just for point of reference, Kelly is one of my best friends and is an amazing person and is very engaged and is great at understanding other perspectives. But from an outside perspective, it's easy to look at Kelly and go, well, she's white, she's a woman, she does massage therapy, and she's an actor. Like, it ticks several stereotype boxes, even though you're not that stereotype, but you know.
yeah, no. I think it's important to like even as we're talking right now, I'm like, I'm in a space with people of color and I don't want to center my voice. Like, but I will just want to put that out there right now. But like, I feel like it's really important to listen right now, as always, but like always listen more than you speak. And I'm more of an observer at this point and the listener as much as I can, because I feel like there's just obviously so much to learn always, and not to put myself or other white folks down, but like we're not the most important, we're not the ones we should be listening to. And so, you know, I've kind of taken a step back from um I think if we're talking about the artistic community in general or in Philadelphia specifically, or what do we?
What your experience is? I mean, you can only speak to your experience. I don't think it's fair to ask you something outside your realm of experience or ask you to represent all people. I'm just
Yeah.
asking you, like what, uh, this is literally, people of color asking you your perspective. So I'm not asking you to center your voice. I'm just asking you to tell us what it is we don't see. Like we don't get to be in. One of the things that I've always seen is that the instant a person of color, that is identifiably a person of color, comes into a white space that was, populated by all white people, the tone changes. There's an instant change. And that's in every sort of room. I've never run into a room that doesn't do this. Um, but like it's when we talk about it from a minority perspective, we, like people call it safe spaces or what have you. The general European white middle class safe space is most of the world up till now. But still, folks that are progressive and liberal and even if they're in a white safe space, and there's no people of color around, they have different conversations than they do as soon as a person of color enters the room. And it can be from a positive perspective. It can be like, I don't want to center myself. I don't want my voice to override this person's experience or voice. But it can also it also just changes. Like we don't know. Like Rick and I can't walk into a room with a bunch of white women and hear what the conversation is. I don't know, like from reading Twitter, I would guess that there are people panicking and being like, "Oh my God, like what are we going to do now?" But I don't know that for sure. So that's what I'm asking. I'm asking what that perspective is, like, what that experience is like. What is it to inhabit the life of a white woman in liberal, a liberal general artistic bent right now?
I think the temperature is pretty hot. I think that um, I have noticed, and this is a good thing, that even in spaces where there aren't people of color, people are actively saying and speaking up when things either aren't, being spoken about correctly, or if, for example, if there's, a team of people, I will notice that people will say, well, I really want to make sure we bring more, people of color, or I want to make sure, I have noticed that like people are actively speaking without people of color in the room, which is really, I think, a lot of progress from what I've noticed in the community. Not a lot, but some progress. And I think that's a good thing. I feel like I have noticed in rooms, again, like where there's no people of color, like people are making an effort. Um, and I think, I have noticed that shift. Even just the other day, I was like out at a gathering with people, and we were talking about the community in general and the Philadelphia community specifically. And I would say this year is the first time um, that I've spoken out loud with other white people, um, really openly and kind of like trying to hold each other accountable, which is really nice and good. I feel like people were afraid of that before, or didn't know how to have those conversations. And I mean, I have seen progress on that end, to be honest, which is good.
Yeah, it's always good.
Um,
Like what I hear when oftentimes when I get invited into a space, I'll hear that somebody did ask the question, "Why aren't there any people of color here?" Which is a great question to ask. Like like if you're in a room. I mean, I've asked it before. There's a new shop in my neighborhood, and I live in a traditionally African American neighborhood. I live in South Philly on the west side of Broad, and my block actually historically was owned by doctors and lawyers who were African American. Um, a lot of them, freed slaves and freedmen. Who then became doctors and lawyers because they felt that they could serve their community. Um, and it's interesting because that shop, the patronage of that shop doesn't reflect the neighborhood. Like the owner is drawing all of their patronage from outside the neighborhood, and people notice. Like I'm not the only one who has said, I've never seen a black person go in that shop. Um, and so it is always a good question to ask, I think. I think it's important to ask that kind of question. If there aren't people of color in the room, there's usually a reason. And yeah, I don't know. Like that reason could be their own safety. That reason could be because nobody invited us. But it's usually it usually one leads to the other in my experience.
Yeah, I think also like always reminding yourself as in white people, that you are not the global majority. Like you're not. And, I think that's something that's just so important to remember. And it's like, I don't know. Yeah.
Kelly, can I ask you a question? And you may or may not have a personal answer to this.
Yeah.
What was it like when the shift began to happen for you? Like when you began to realize, oh, wait, there's a demographic problem, and I'm on one side of this demographic, and we see what the rest of this, what it should look like, and we see what the world looks like. What was that shift like for you? Like when that light bulb went on?
Yeah. So it's like something that I've always been aware of knowing, but I don't think the nuances or like you, I don't think I've noticed the things that I might have noticed before, like in rooms with people of color, or the microaggressions, or the things people say, passively. I don't think I started clocking that until like the past couple of years. And then when you realize what you have said or what other people said, and you clock it, I mean, there's so many feelings that happen. I mean, you feel horrible, you feel ignorant, you feel, you know, ashamed, you feel all of the things, but then it, makes you want to grow and learn and be better, and try to help call other people out when you see or hear things. It's like, and there have been times where like I have either thought things or said things and didn't even realize like how that could have been how my impact, and I didn't even realize that it could have. Yeah, it's been very eye-opening.
I think it's
Um,
interesting. You're saying here, like, what you're saying is it makes you want to grow. I think, I don't know if that's perhaps the rule and the exception is the folks that become Christo-fascists because of it, or
I know where you're going. I think it's the other way around.
do you think the rule is that people feel shame and
And they go,
ignorance
well,
and
my grandma couldn't have been wrong.
right?
My grandpa could. Like, I appreciate you explaining it, Kelly, and explaining kind of how you felt and where it hit, because I sort of see that. Like, I talk to people from like Kentucky and Alabama and Florida. Like, I have all these different demographics of people because I kind of want to know what's going on. And so trying to understand like what that moment was like, thank you, Kelly. Because that it helps to understand that oh fuck moment, and then the difference is how people respond, because some people, it's like when people find out, that their pastor like is a charlatan, or when they find out that their grandfather wasn't really their grandfather and that grandma wasn't who they thought she was. Like when you have that oh fuck moment, you have that thing where you kind of have to choose which road you go down. And do you stick with the mythology that you're used to, or do you, like Kelly said, do you go like, I want to learn, I want to change, and I want to call other people to change? And so I appreciate people, like I appreciate Kelly, like being able to express that oh fuck moment, and then making the choice to like, okay, well, let me do what is
I
humane.
mean,
And
are we going back to the quote that keeps being thrown out there that, you know, conservatism is just the tendency to towards fascism in a capitalist society, because you know what even the words that you're using, Rick, are, you know, that they want to hold on to the mythology that they understand, and hold on to the knowledge that they have, you know, knowledge in big ass air quotes there, but knowledge because it's not actually knowledge, you know, like we oftentimes I find it interesting that oftentimes the conservative side of things falls on the street smarts side of the spectrum. Like they're all about street smarts. They're about like what you learn through doing. Um, and I find it, you know, like the anti-intellectualism of conservatism is interesting to me from the perspective of like what you're saying, you know, people learn these things through a mythology and a history that they grew up with, but that history isn't actual knowledge. It's just what they learned, you know, in their social structure. Um, Yeah, I mean, let's look at an example of you know, street smarts. Folks would say, you know, there are a lot of shootings happening in Philadelphia. There's a lot of violence in Philadelphia right now. Everybody can acknowledge that. Everybody can acknowledge that having 11 shooting incidents and 3 deaths a night isn't a good thing. Um, eh, but and the common sense, the street smarts answer would be, well, you know, why isn't law enforcement having an impact? Maybe we should invest more in law enforcement. Maybe there should be cops out on the street. I've even said that before. Like I've said, like, why aren't there beat cops anymore? Why aren't there people literally out on the street? But when you when you're confronted with evidence like the South Street shooting that police presence doesn't work, doesn't deter violence, um, where do you go from there? Do you double down and you go, oh, you know, we need to return to a time when cops could break people's legs to get confessions? Or do we learn from it and go forward and go, okay, so what would actually solve the problem? And I think that that in and of itself is part of the problem. Is the going forward, we don't necessarily have the answer, like, right, like everybody who's talking about moving forward and learning, you don't have the answer. Like that's not an answer in and of itself to the problem, whereas falling back on your common sense is an answer. Like it's a definitive answer. It's the wrong answer, but it's a definitive answer for yourself. You know, you can go, oh, well, the cops just didn't do a good job in that case. Maybe they need more money or more training or whatever.
or maybe what Granddad said about, you know, those people in the city is true. And see, here's the evidence
Right.
that what my granddad used to say is true.
Right.
Um, I I think, and it's weird. So Biden gave a speech where he was talking about after like the latest, after the Buffalo shooting, he gave a speech talking about, you know, getting certain guns off the street and investing in mental health, and you know that was part of his plan. And I laughed because really dealing with mental health in America means dealing with the healthcare system in America, means dealing with, the insurance industry. So
It also
the
means dealing with all the stochastic terrorism that's going on that people don't even really acknowledge as terrorism.
right, but the it's not that the answers aren't there. It's that people don't. When I say people, everything from political leadership to your average American don't really want to do what it takes to deal with them. Like I live out in suburban New Jersey. I live in Medford Lakes. It's a ridiculously like trouble-free town. We have 10 cops in our town. Fairly well-to-do, um, safe, spacious, blah 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 blah. Um,
A suburb.
yeah, and it's almost even like a little bit of an Uber suburb. Like it's weird that I live here. Like I live in the woods. I'm officially a piney. It's bizarre. Um, but if you go north to Mount Holly or if you go south to Camden, like it's a completely different planet. And people don't want to acknowledge that what it comes down to is things like resources. And it comes down to giving people reasons to not have to commit crime. And so it doesn't matter how many police you put on the streets. It doesn't matter what the presence is. Police respond to crime, they don't prevent it. But what it would take to deal with replacing the infrastructure in Camden is something that people who have the resources and people who took the resources out of Camden and moved them to Cherry Hill and moved them to Voorhees and moved them to Mount Laurel, they don't want to put those resources back. They don't. It's much easier to look at the problem and say, it's their fault. And it kind of becomes the same thing historically. One of the big reasons that people freak out about CRT, and we won't get into the fact that it's not really CRT that they're talking about, but the reason that people don't want to get into history is because getting into history, again, brings them to that oh fuck moment and brings them to that fork. How would people look at African Americans if what schools taught was that the American Revolution was basically funded with tobacco, cotton, and sugar? Like that's what we used to buy guns from the French and the Dutch. Like, and so where did that tobacco, cotton, and sugar come from?
Came from stolen land
Like,
and slave labor.
right. And so if it just that parallel, like if just that fact were taught in schools,
Yeah.
how would that change how African Americans look at themselves? And how would that change how we as a country look at African Americans? It's like my great, 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 great grandfather's labor helped us become a country. But like that kind of thing brings people to a point where it's like, no, like I won't deal with that. I won't look at things through that lens, through that prism. And so it winds up being this whole thing of you can talk about gun violence, but nobody really wants to talk about why there's gun violence. Nobody really wants to talk
Well,
about
I do want to talk about why there's gun violence. And I want to talk about something that you brought in, which is the theft of resources from the black community, which is still going on today. People think that we solved slavery and we solved civil rights, but there's a lot of theft of resources, money, labor from the black community without returning goods and services in exchange. And so what I wanted to bring up is Breonna Taylor. This past week, Breonna Taylor's murderers and conspirators in her murder, several of them were arrested by the federal authorities. It used to be a time in civil rights history where black people could rely on federal authorities to actually do their job and equally apply the law to everyone.
Federal authorities were assassinating people.
And they were also actually persecuting criminals who were also assassinating people. But There was a time when, when it was a better shot with, I mean, I grew up in Maryland. I remember when the line of escalation wasn't ever your local cops. It was the state PD, and then if you couldn't get staties to come, you would call the FBI. And I lived in a on next to a army base, so like people weren't afraid of authority. They just knew that the locals were corrupt. The state PD was a little less corrupt, and the feds would actually do something if there was a civil rights violation. Um, that being said, Breonna Taylor, if you look at the case around Breonna Taylor and her murderer, um, it becomes very intriguing very quickly, and there's very little outside of conspiracy theory to answer what happened. Um, and in this case, I'm not using conspiracy theory to mean some wild made up narrative. I'm using conspiracy theory to mean an actual conspiracy to do something, and a theory about what that conspiracy is. So in the case of Breonna Taylor, if you'll remember, was a nurse. She was relatively a middle class citizen. She went to work every day, and was murdered in her sleep in her home, by a police officer entering her home on a no-knock warrant. Um, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend was arrested, and the police tried to get him to agree to, um, basically throwing her dead self under the bus, and saying that she was involved in drug sales with him. The no-knock warrant was issued because two police officers swore to a judge that Breonna Taylor was involved in drug sales, and that Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend, who was a known drug dealer, lived at Breonna Taylor's address and received packages at Breonna Taylor's address. Even though they had no evidence of that, they literally met to corroborate stories and to conspire to have this no-knock warrant issued on Breonna Taylor's address. If you look at it a little bit deeper, these same two cops have had several no-knock warrants issued against completely innocent people in Breonna Taylor's neighborhood. Um, and this is a repeated action that goes back several years. They've been doing this for several years. If you look even a little bit deeper, one of the police officers is related to a developer, a real estate developer in the town that Breonna Taylor lived in. So suddenly you have an actual conspiracy that sort of explains itself. I don't know if I have to really go out to explain it here, but somebody wants a piece of property. Somebody else is helping them get it. This kind of thing happens all the time in the Black community. We usually just ignore it because we chalk it up to crime. We chalk it up to criminal behavior. We chalk it up to recidivism. 90% of the time, that's not even the case. 90% of the time, it's something like this. It's something where there's a resource within the Black community, be it labor, money, or real estate, and somebody else outside that community wants it and they don't want to pay full price for it. I don't know how to make it any more clear than that, until you go and you look at the UC Townhomes. So the UC Townhomes are a low income housing community at the corner of 40th and Market Street. Something like 300 homes, I believe. and it's a nice community. I lived right around the corner from them, in an apartment, in a row home apartment, for 10 years. Never any problems. There's no criminal activity. It's not a hotbed for anything. So what's going on right now is that people are saying, if you're going to, there's a developer that wants that property. They want to build market price condos on that property. Um, that developer is tangentially supported by and associated with both UPenn and Drexel, which, yeah, shocker. If you don't know the story of UPenn and Drexel's campuses, UPenn and Drexel both occasionally basically annex part of the city, and expand the borders of their campuses by just saying, we're going to take this now. There's actually...
Temple does it too, by the way.
Huh?
Temple does it too.
Oh, Temple does it too. Yeah, no, yeah, they do it all the time. And there's a big fight about Temple's. They want to build a stadium up in North Philly, but there's an interesting program, I'll bring to everybody's attention, that is a systemic theft of property from the Black community. So if you are a UPenn alumnus, whether you're currently going to school, graduated, or long out of school, if you're an alum, you can get a low to no interest loan from the University of Pennsylvania to purchase a property within 3 miles of the campus, so long as you purchase that property and put the University of Pennsylvania on the note, so that if anything goes wrong with your mortgage, UPenn now owns it. It's a great program.
It's the Homestead Act
Yes.
in West Philly.
Yes. So yeah. I mean, I don't know, like, how many ways people wanna like do this, but it fascinates me. It's a fascinating process. So the UC Townhomes, they're trying to develop them. The people who live in UC Townhomes have had several demonstration and protests. There was a protest this past week, which I did not send any cameras to because I didn't know it was actually happening. Bad on me for not following along closely enough. But there was a live-in protest. People set up a tent city in the middle of the UC Townhomes, and the sheriffs were called, and the sheriffs literally cleared the tent city, and destroyed people's property, illegally seizing property, and illegally forcing people to stop gathering to execute their First Amendment rights. Nobody had guns on the property. Nobody was, threatening to overthrow the government. Nobody was, even saying anything controversial. They were just saying that they didn't want to leave without actual other realistic options for all the tenants of the UC Townhomes available to them so that they could have some place to live.
They were given moving vouchers,
Oh, yeah.
supposedly.
Right. That aren't worth
Not that-
the moving voucher.
Right. Not that the market at this point would bear, 300 families moving somewhere easily.
Right. And also not that the market can or would bear those 300 families moving at the rates that they're paying at the UC Townhomes. That's the big part. Like, they're like, I'm sorry, I'm entirely on their side here. How do you just say, like, this isn't your home anymore? It's their home, and then not offer a comparable thing for them to move to, when that's part of the covenant that got the developer the property in the first place, is that they were going to offer comparable living spaces for all of the current residents. So there's that going on. um, and you know, it's 10:52, so I wanted to transfer to the last two things here: illegal investigations and right to privacy. Um, I'm sure Rick is aware of this. I don't know how much Kelly you're aware of this, but just for folks that are younger than us and also less aware of, like, politics and law than us. Back in the era when there wasn't email, we used to write these things called letters. Um, they were printed or written on paper, folded up, put into an envelope. Let me see if I have one around here. Nope, I don't even have one on my table because I don't use them that often. They were put into an envelope, entrusted to the federal government, the U.S. Postal Service, and sent to the intended recipient of the message. So yeah, it's a long time. It takes two-ish days to get a letter across the country. Not exactly text message speed. We didn't have cell phones. We had to, find a landline. But those landlines, you picked it up, you dialed a number, you called somebody else, and it is a private conversation. Same thing with the letter. It's a private letter. We set up in that era these invaluable walls around communication privacy. When you were communicating for individual to individual purposes, it was almost impossible for anybody to intercept that communication legally. And there were a lot of laws set up also around, if you did intercept that communication, you broke the law and you were subject to heavy fines and jail time. People don't remember this, perhaps, I guess, but that was like kind of the rules that we grew up under. Individual to individual communication is private, it's invaluable. You have to have done something really, really bad, like be the leader of a drug cartel for the government even to be granted the right to listen in on your communications. And they still couldn't intercept your letters. So if you sent something by the Postal Service, you were fine. You could communicate about things that you wanted to all you want. Nobody could read it. As text messaging, cellular communication, internet communication, messenger services have developed, I think people have kind of forgotten this, but also have a weird echo memory of it. So there was a case recently of the police requesting access to a mother and daughter's Facebook Messenger history, and then using that Facebook Messenger history to build a case against the mother and daughter. Huh?
Is this the abortion
Yes, to build a case against the mother and daughter for illegally having a private abortion. Okay, where do I even start? Where suddenly did we get the idea that so all the pushback on the internet is, oh, well, you shouldn't be mad at Facebook because Facebook just has to turn over what they have according to police requests. And no, they don't. They do have to turn it over if a court requests it, but they shouldn't be even collecting that information in the first place. Where did we lose this right to privacy?
Technology always outpaces the law. So laws wind up reacting to, speed limits came after cars started getting faster. That's the simplest analogy. So Facebook was always a data mining platform.
Sure, if you're not paying for it, you're the product.
Right. And so Um, and one of the things that, and like you saw it, when people were like mad that Cheeto got banned off of Twitter, people, well, what happened to the First Amendment, blah, blah, blah. Well, like none of that shit applies when you're on a private platform. And what happens is, because it's fun and because it's easy and because it's free and because it allows us to do some really cool things, there's a lot of things that people are willing to overlook. Like, this is going to, and people like even joke about it. It's like the other day I was talking about cheese, and like all of a sudden there's all these ads for cheese on my Facebook. And instead of realizing, wait a minute, it's kind of haha jokey sort of thing. So unfortunately, when people put things online, and particularly put them on something like which is Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those are just wide open platforms. And they still have that expectation of, this is only going to who I send it to, or I can put this out in the world and it can't be held against me. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. So the whole Nebraska thing and law enforcement going to Facebook and pulling all this shit, it sucks and it's evil and it's wretched. But I think it's almost not the actual problem, in that, okay, so this girl and her mom posted stuff. Facebook had to turn it in. The police used it against them. The fact of the matter, like if we go all the way back, what really sucks is that the Nebraska legislature made abortion illegal.
Sure.
Like that's the sort of the bigger issue. This is totally like a political plug. Vote in your state elections. State elections matter. But I don't know that there's any way, because like,
one sec, just to clarify, Nebraska's legislature made abortion illegal after 20 weeks, which is shorter than most of the 23-week bans, which is shorter than viability, which is really at 24 weeks, and which is shorter than this young woman was pregnant at 26 weeks. However, 26 weeks goes by really fucking fast. So,
right.
And in the messages that have been posted, they're talking about how long it took to get the medication that they ordered. So there's that whole thing. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
No. Good clarifications and important clarifications. I don't know that there's a way to stop a private platform. How can I put what I'm saying? Like, people are going to keep giving Facebook information. And as long as people keep giving Facebook information, I don't know that there's a way to stop that information from being subpoenaed. I don't know that it's kind of like, so going back to like what you were talking about with like phone calls and letters, this isn't like, like you said, like now it's still a federal offense to open somebody else's mail, but this is more like people going out and spray painting things on a wall.
But the thing is, we have this weird institutional memory of when private communications were actually private and protected.
But social media isn't private communication,
right? But it's been designed to feel like it is too. It's a UI problem, a UX problem, user experience problem, where people feel like a call on Facebook Messenger is a phone call. I can't tell you how many times, I don't have the Facebook Messenger app installed on my phone. I can't tell you how many times people have called me on Facebook Messenger, and I'm like, I don't use that thing. Like, just give me a call on my regular phone. Like, I at least somewhat trust that.
Like, don't call me. But right, no, I get it. But again, that's like the user experience that people expect, I don't think is ever going to actually be what social media is. And people get upset because Facebook is data mining, because Facebook is collecting information, because Facebook sells that information, and or that information gets subpoenaed, and they go, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is this not private? And
They
not
never
realize,
said it
well,
was.
because you said it doesn't have to be.
Mhm.
Because you go ahead.
I was just gonna say my partner is an attorney, and he's constantly reminding me that you have to really, really, really look at fine print for everything, because you would assume that that you are protected, or that things won't be A, B, C, and D, but you know, it's just, yeah, there's no, like what you said, James, about feeling like, oh, well, people are, it's been built to seem like we're having, but it's like nobody ever said it was.
Right.
And like, I won't trust anything. Like, if I want to have a private conversation, I'll be in a room with my phone shut off. And like, I mean, I don't go to that extent yet, but I'm saying if that's what I really wanted, I would make sure my phone was shut off, my computer was shut off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just expect to be listened to all the time.
Right.
And
I
I
think
expect
that's
nothing
it.
private.
I think it's important that people actually start having that expectation, that they realize that is the expectation, and start protecting themselves as if, as if they're always being listened to, or their emails are always being read. But I also think from the legal side, it's important that we try and make law catch up with technology and protect private interpersonal communication. Like, there should just
Yeah.
be a universal protection if it's one person talking to another, and you're not intentionally inviting other people to listen, then your communication is protected. That should be the rule.
And
Would
another
you
thing,
go ahead, Kelly?
I was just gonna say, and another thing is like the other can of worms is people don't know their rights.
Right.
And like, people love that people don't know their rights.
Mhm.
And like, that's another huge problem. It's like, oh, I didn't even know I could do that. I didn't even know that I had that. I didn't even know I could say that. And it's like, that sucks. Like, people are in the freaking dark with a lot of things.
Most things, yeah. So James, if you were having a conversation with somebody on a subway, and you were having a conversation with them about something that you were going to do that was illegal, is the person sitting behind you unethical if they rat you out?
Well, I mean, there's the street answer and there's the legal answer. The street answer is yes. They better not rat you out, because that's the no snitches.
Right.
But the legal answer is a little bit dubious. There are places in the country, because privacy rights are very local. There's no federal right to privacy. In fact, the SCOTUS just basically overturned any access to right to privacy enshrined in federal law with their Roe v. Wade overturning decision. What was that, Dodd or something like that? I forget.
Yeah. Yeah.
That decision basically said that anybody who thought there was a right to privacy, yeah, no, you're wrong. That's what they were saying with that decision. But yeah, so local privacy rights do exist, and there are places where, even sitting in public, say you were sitting at a restaurant and somebody overheard you, um, you cannot report that to police, and it's not actionable even if you did report it to the police, because the police cannot use that as a reason to act. There are
Because
places,
essentially it's hearsay.
right, and
Exactly.
But
there are
but that
places that they can.
but that encapsulates the social media privacy thing. And it's like, if you put it in a real world setting, it looks a little bit different. And what you said about, like, well, the street The street version is snitches get stitches. And so, like, that same common sense thing is, well, I'm talking to my friend on Messenger, but the legal aspect is more complicated and more convoluted and more regional and more specific. And so, like, that's the conundrum. Like, everything that you just said is exactly the issue that you have when it comes to like social media privacy.
Yeah.
And also, it's written down. Like, there's a receipt.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
you know, like you can see the thing and the date and the stamp. Like, even legally, lawyers can go into that shit and scoop up stuff from what, like, there's software, you know, that you can, like, if it's written down, you're fucked.
Right. Well, let's hope Alex Jones wrote down a lot of stuff on his cell phone. It was 11:00. It is 11:08. I do want to transition out of the show. Do either of you have any last thoughts? I want to respect your time, and I got stuff to do today too. So, any last thoughts from you, Kelly?
I hope you both have a great day.
Thanks, Rick.
I hope you have a great day too. Everybody, please vote in November. Like I said, Candace shows us there's more of us than there are of them. Let's put Josh Shapiro in as governor, and let's put Fetterman in the Congress instead of Oz.
I don't think Oz has a rat's chance in hell, but
yeah, we didn't think Trump did either.
Exactly.
Get the fuck out and vote, people.
I actually expect the clowns to get voted in.
It's true.
Like, I'm right with you, Rick.
All right. Let's talk more about this in future shows. Thank you guys for being on the show. I'm going to transition to just me. Feel free to hang around if you want to talk. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Rick, for joining me today. Really appreciate you guys and your opinions and your viewpoints. And thank you to the audience for joining us today. I do see like we're getting increased audience numbers. It's great. All we're doing here is trying to bring you unique perspectives. I've built this platform just so that people who don't normally get to platform their stuff get a place to platform it. Get to speak out on topics of interest. They get to talk about things that are happening, things that are going on, and provide you a perspective that you may not get in your everyday interactions. So, if you like that, if you you like what you see, please subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/lightbeefproductions. If you want to see more local news and events, if there's something coming up that you think should be covered, please reach out, give us a shout via social media or email and say, hey, there's this thing going on. It might be interesting to see if it was covered. If you can't get regular media to write about it or talk about it, bring it to our attention. We'll platform you. We'll try and give you a voice. Please hit the like button. I know everybody says it, and it sounds really silly to just say hit like, subscribe, and share. But really, hit the like button. Subscribe to our channels. We're out there on YouTube. We're out on Facebook. Mob Crush is no longer, so you won't see us there, but you'll see us on Twitch and on Twitter. You can subscribe to us on all the places. You can get notifications when we go live. And every subscription adds to the amount that we're promoted by the algorithms on those various platforms. So subscribe on all the platforms. Hit the like button on all the platforms. Share this out on your social media. Like, you see something that's interesting or something that made you think or something that's relevant to something somebody else posts. Share a time-coded link from YouTube to what you want people to see. And let these voices be heard further and wider. So again, thank you for watching. Tune in again. We are going to take next Wednesday off, I believe it is. Yes, next Wednesday we're taking off. Like I said, and then we'll be back on the 24th. We'll have our guest will be Jennifer Turnbull, an amazing producer, executive director, puppeteer, builder, artist. Love talking to her, talking to them, and we will see you then. Enjoy the next couple of weeks, folks, and enjoy definitely the rest of your week.